This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about the Magnificent Ambersons, directed by Orson Welles from 1942, and the brief synopsis from Letterboxd. The spoiled young heir to the decaying Amberson fortune comes between his widowed mother and the man she has always loved.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
So RJ, are you familiar with the tale of the Magnificent Ambersons as far as like its historical place in film history?
Not really.
Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a little bit of a recap. So,
Okay.
Orson Welles, he directed that Citizen Kane over there at RKO Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was, this movie at the time was kind of this like kind of weird like movie where he'd been given all this creative control, and he made what would later be called a masterpiece, greatest film ever made, studied in film schools all
Allegedly.
around. Allegedly. We covered it back in episode 25, I think it was, something like that.
That was a while ago.
That was a while ago. Yeah, I know. Here we are. It's number 1 in the Criterion Laserdisc Collection, and here we are at number 9. So Magnificent Ambersons was his follow-up film, and it was cruelly taken away from him.
In what sense?
Well, he submitted his final cut, which I think was like 135 minutes long. And then he had to take off to Africa during the war to do some projects over there.
Like he pulled a Dave Chappelle
for the effort during the
Yeah.
war. So he got sidetracked, and the studio was not really happy with the way this film was testing, because this was like a period of time in old Hollywood where we didn't have the auteur theory going. We didn't have directors. We had producers. We had these movies belonged to the people who were funding these movies, and they got directors to work on it. So I mean, this movie was produced by Orson Welles, but RKO had their money dumped into this bad boy, and they wanted a return. So they had this opportunity while Orson Welles was away, gallivanting, not taking their suggestions. And film editor, one Robert Wise, who we've talked about in the past, he went to work on this film.
When did we talk about him in the past?
Robert Wise, the director of such films as The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Haunting, Star Trek The Motion Picture, amongst many other things.
Well, he should have been a good fit.
Well, I mean, he's not a bad editor or anything like that, but he made lots of movies. He was an RKO guy. Yeah. So anyway, he was told what to do, so he was like, okay, I got to make this shorter. So he wound up working on this movie, much to the chagrin of Orson Welles, who just like thought his version was like amazing and perfect, and now he has a movie that's 88 minutes long. And so this movie has always had this reputation of kind of like being the movie that like began the like, I don't know, the Terry Gilliam-esque fall of like Orson Welles. Like if you look at his filmography, he made movies. Like he continued making movies for like the rest of his life, but it was getting harder and harder. The years between the movies was getting longer and longer. He never really was ever able to make anything uncompromised ever again. Like it was always like an uphill battle. Which I mean is a combination of the personality of these guys and the studio system, because there's plenty of directors who've been able to negotiate these things and still have great careers, and then there's these guys that they hit a wall and they just do not play ball in the way that the studio system works. I don't know if it's right or wrong. It is what it is. So the thing with the Magnificent Ambersons, its reputation forever and ever was that the only version you can watch is the compromised version, which is the version we watched this week. And the holy grail of cinema is being able to find a fully intact 135-minute cut that Orson Welles had made. There's like always been talk that, well, there's a copy maybe down in like Brazil or South America, that because back in the day, like this like the way they, I mean, you'd have your film negative originals, right? And then you'd cut prints, and then like you'd send them out to get them out to these corners of the world that would take forever to get to. So you want to get them out soon. And sometimes these original versions would like sneak through the cracks. It's kind of like what happened with Metropolis when they found it in like this Argentinian like broom closet. Like there's just like these things you're like, or like in the like an old like mental institution. Like these things happen. Like it's crazy.
Isn't that where they found Jurassic Park?
Yeah, exactly. In Amber.
Like the real cut.
Yeah, in Amber.
Anyways, so keep going.
Okay, so when you're watching this movie, you kind of have to like go in knowing that. So this is not maybe the dream version. This isn't the ideal version of the movie. That being said, so I watched this movie a few years ago for the very first time because it was like on like one of those like MGM 4-packs. I think it was like Classic Moms. With movies like I Remember Mama and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just like
and Mr. Mom,
Mrs. Miniver, which is actually a really good movie too. What's the name of that one? It's also a good movie. It's a good set actually. So I finally got to watch that Magnificent Ambersons, and watching it at the time, I was like this movie's like pretty good. Like just like the story is like just this sort of simple melodrama of rich folk and their infighting and relationships, blah blah blah. But like the film craft on display, the filmmaking, the camera work, it's like fantastic. Like you're like watching this and you're like, well, this is like on a completely different level than films being made in 1941, 1942. Like the way he shoots people, it looks like a contemporary movie. There's like actually almost like a roughness to the movie. Like it almost looks sloppy. It doesn't have a studio polish, which is really interesting. And then like, yeah, there's like all these film qualities that like, oh yeah, that's Welles all right. His use of light and shadow, blah blah blah. So watching this movie again, like I said, my mind wasn't fully on watching movies this week, so I was kind of like, oh man, not the best time to be watching this again. But there's like all the things that I liked about this movie the first time, we're all still there. I like think this movie is like pretty cool, even though it's like I'm fully aware that it's like, yeah, this movie is like, it's like I was really amazed when this movie just ended. I was kind of like, oh, that's it. And I always remember like how obvious the fucking happy ending of this movie is, because it just makes no sense at all. It comes out of nowhere, and you're like, well, this movie's not supposed to end this way. Like this is like such a false happy note that they're trying to put into a movie to salvage it, to make it marketable rather than like this like grim thing. But yeah, no, I think this movie is pretty decent, pretty good.
Yeah, two E's or what?
Two E's, my friend, and an S. Yeah, decent.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. I'll toss it over to you and maybe talk a little bit more afterwards. But RJ, what did you think of your maiden voyage with the Magnificent Ambersons?
My maiden voyage, eh? Well, I'm gonna lay it on you like this, Jer.
Yo.
This is only the second Orson Welles movie I've ever seen.
Oh my god, you're such a fucking ugh.
And the
reason why is because by saying that means you've never seen Touch of Evil. And it's just like, come on, dude.
Was that a future creep?
No, it's not even, I don't think. It's just...
Well, I'll watch that soon then.
Okay. Yeah.
F for Fake is a future creep.
Yeah, that's like a documentary.
And
weird
Othello is a future creep.
Oh yeah, no, I got all those Welles.
Okay, so if anyone has been listening that far back,
you should also watch his The Trial. That movie's fucking amazing, dude.
If anyone has been listening and keeping track that far back, all the way to episode 25, 75 episodes ago, one of the big reasons we were doing the Laserdisc thing, the Laserdisc initiative, started with an idea, Jarrett. It was like the Marvel universe. It started with an idea. You found out that I had never seen Citizen Kane.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first Orson Welles movie I ever watched.
Yeah.
And this was the second. Why? I don't know. I always thought Citizen Kane was too big for the hype. It was one of those things.
Too big for its britches? Yeah,
because it was just...
Or too small for its britches.
Yeah, maybe that one. Because I always heard about it forever and ever. And you see it parodied and stolen from in mediums all over. I mean, my only foray in Citizen Kane was that Simpsons episode with Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
That was how I knew Citizen Kane was from that.
I think that's many people actually for a generation. Yeah.
Yeah. So just through cultural osmosis and other mediums, it gets absorbed. So this is the second Orson Welles movie I've watched, unless you count that video of him talking about the French wine, which I think is a film in itself. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
The French. Yeah. So anyways, was that as good as how he delivers that line? The French. So this is my second. Until you just mentioned this troubled production, I had no idea that was even a thing. I've never heard of the Magnificent Ambersons. I had never heard of this troubled past where there's 50 minutes just lifted right out of this movie. Or however much it was taken away from this. I just watched this fucking movie last week.
Cool.
Going in completely cold. And my general response was this, Jared. I'll lay it on you like this.
Yep.
This movie is very well made. That was evident very immediately. There was some cool track and shot stuff. The big ballroom sequence, the big scene, that was really cool. The camera just kind of flowed through the room. It was all shot very nice. It looked fucking great. I was like, oh yeah, this is some of that Orson Welles shit that I hear about all the time. This right here, it looks great. Like you said, the film craft I think is pretty strong in this one. Even in this altered version that takes away from what I guess. Like, I don't know, was it 50 minutes you said? From 80 minutes?
Yeah, okay. So I'm just kind of, I'm browsing over there on that Wikipedia, the bastion of all truth.
Yeah.
So, okay. So there was the original rough cut of the film was approximately 135 minutes. Wells felt the film needed to be shortened, and after receiving a mixed response from a March 17th preview audience in Pomona, film editor Robert Weiser removed several minutes from it. The film was previewed again, but the audience response did not improve. Because Wells had conceded his original contractual right to the final cut in a negotiation with RKO over a film which he was obliged to direct but never did. RKO took over editing once Wells had delivered a first cut. RKO deleted more than 40 additional minutes and reshot the ending in late April and early May in changes directed by assistant director Fred Fleck, Robert Wise, and Jack Moss, the business manager of Wells' Mercury Theatre. The retakes replaced Wells' original ending with a happier one that broke significantly with the film's tone. The reshot ending is the same as in the novel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
gotcha.
there's 40 minutes of a movie that are just gone.
Right. Okay. So knowing that now, well, I didn't know that when I watched it.
Yeah.
Knowing it now, I think it changes my perspective a little bit. But my general response at first, my initial reaction was, yeah, this movie looks really good. It's got some pretty cool filmmaking. Like there's the one shot where the camera's moving back, the people are walking towards it, and then they start going up the stairs and stuff like that. I was like, that's really cool. I don't know how they did that. They must have been on some huge fucking crane, because it starts way back in one room. Comes the camera backs up, the people are walking towards it for a good bit, and then they go up the stairs. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a good shot, man. This looks nice. So I think all of that stuff is really good. I see why this is hot to trot. But this movie also falls into my category of pathetic rich people that I don't feel bad for, in a sense. So I don't love the story itself, mostly because that George guy's a real fucking piece of shit, and like intentionally so. Yeah. But at the same time, I was like that's the point of the movie, is that he's just like a real shitty dude.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was watching it and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I have a really hard time getting invested in this really fucking pouty kid with the Oedipus complex. He's like, Mom, you can't date anyone. That guy sucks. Like, I want to marry this girl. And you're like, ugh. Because, like, there's so much attention given to it. And I know it's supposed to be, like, you're supposed to look at them, and then you're supposed to look at the family that's not been given as much attention as these guys have. Well, they're always there, I guess. But I feel like the really shitty George guy is I felt like he was the main point of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I know it's intentional so that you see that other family and kind of see their humble, modest side in the background. It's like, oh, like these are very different ways of being a rich guy or rich family. But I found it was a little hard to root for these rich people in any of their problems. And it's like, well, I guess he gets his comeuppance. And it's like, not really. He like loses all his money and is like, oh, boo hoo. And then he gets hit by a car.
Mom dies and he gets
dies.
Yeah, he's supposed to fucking be dead.
Well, everyone dies, Jarrett.
Yeah, everyone dies eventually.
Everyone dies. And then I thought the ending was a real piece of shit where they're like, it's like, oh, well, we're going to take care of things. That's what everyone wants. And I was like, fuck off.
Yeah, that ending,
and like,
man.
So it sounds like that's not the real ending of what they were trying to do. So it changes my opinion a little bit. This truncated version that I watched, I liked all of the filmmaking parts of it, but the story itself, I was like, I don't like this guy who says duck way too much. Way too fucking much. Oh, you don't mean those queer ducks over there? What about that queer duck looking at me? He says duck way too much, and he was just like the epitome of like stubborn ignorance. Everything that he's talking about, he's like, oh, automobiles. Pah, what? That's you get a horse, you chump. He would say stuff like that, and then to the girls, he's like, why don't you go to a man's college for one day? And it's just like, I hate people like this. I hate you, and I know I'm supposed to hate you, but it's like, but you're all that's on screen for like 80% of this movie. So the filmmaking parts were very good. I didn't love the story with this guy because I just didn't like any of the people.
Right.
But knowing that this is only really 2/3 of the movie, I don't know. It's kind of hard. Hard to say.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like grade this thing or think about. Because it's like it's a compromised vision, so it's kind of like you're left with this movie that's there. But I mean, like, I don't know if the story would change terribly much with that extra 40 minutes. Like, I don't know. It's still like the story's more or less intact. It's just like, the ending is completely like bullshit. Because he's supposed to, I think it's like in the, he's supposed to get blown up because he starts working at a dynamite factory. He takes a job and then he blows up the dynamite factory. And it's like, because it's supposed to be just about, I don't know, this march of technology that's like kind of lingering, which is like, there's like so many elements of this story that just appeal to me on like a personal level. First of all, we have that wonderful third person omniscient narrator that like starts off this movie, where you get the like the picture book framing of like the house and people coming and going. And it's just like, I love like Orson Welles' radio voice and like the eloquence. I imagine a lot of it's like a mix of like so this is based on a book by Booth Tarkington, who's like,
by who? Sorry,
Booth Tarkington.
That's not a real fucking person.
His real name, RJ, is Newton Booth Tarkington. Newton.
Well, that's a real last name at least.
Well, he was born in 1869. And he is one of only 3 novelists to win the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, along William Faulkner and John Updike. So yeah, big deal, this Booth Tarkington in his day. Tark.
I don't buy it.
Tark is what he'd go by, RJ.
I don't buy it.
Tark to you. Anyways, so but yeah, just like that voiceover narration stuff, the narration of events and stuff like that, the turns of phrase, I love all that stuff. And then just sort of this like kind of a approach to Americana and this like weird nostalgia that people have to like this window of time, this like this kind of like being the top of the pile in the Midwest, and it's like what scope that actually was. And then you just kind of are watching the fall of the American family as things go bad. If you're a bad person, it's going to even be worse because no one's actually going to give a crap about you. Especially when you like distance yourself from these people. And then there's like that shot. Like I remember like I lost my mind. I love it.
Would you blow your dick off? What's going on?
RJ, it blew my dick off, Ninja
Which
Scroll
shot?
style. The whole thing that like march down the street, the overhead like shots of just like modernist America, like just like these
Oh,
the
okay.
cold calculated skyline with the like
Yeah, it's pretty
just
cool.
like the modern that in like the voice, because you know like that's when the movie's supposed to really go longer. That's like where a lot of the runtime I think went, from my understanding, is the like that you're supposed to see more of that, the like the darkness of modern America, and for like a man who's being humbled by it and then just gets blown up in a dynamite factory. It's supposed to go like to like that place, and you're supposed to be like the world, America's indifferent. It's not this like loving like picture book image of America. It's like this is what America is, and it's kind of like, oh, Orson Welles got to live that himself, being just like, yeah, this system, fuck you. He managed. He did okay. He didn't get blown up. He got to grow up to be a great big fat man. Showed up on talk shows and was very popular, and is still like beloved in this kind of caricature, cartoonish sort of way now. But yeah, I don't know. I think this movie is like a lot of elements going for it that I really like on a personal level. But yeah, like I said, it's always like it's frustrating because, and it's like that you'll never really get to see the real version of this movie to really be able to judge it. But for the parts of it that like I like quite a bit, and like I said, like on a technical level, this movie's fantastic. Like it looks so great. Those continuous shots on the tracks and stuff like that, like the layering of it, the cinematography. I think back to like when we were talking about with Citizen Kane, like all these like kind of things that he did that were innovative, like shooting at low angles, and then he'd have like this like material over the ceiling so you could hide the microphone, so you could shoot at different levels. Because when you watch some like movies, like even like watching Lady Eve or My Man Godfrey, you always get the sense these movies are in these giant cavernous spaces that aren't real homes. Like they're not like houses. They're sets. They always have this set like quality. Whereas this movie also has that like set like quality, but there's like an intentional like grandioseness to those spaces, because you're supposed to be watching like this massive house that houses these like this massive family, and as it gets like less lit and like with giant chandeliers, suddenly the power and like lights are being kept off because it's expensive, and then it gets darker and darker. But there's those times where like they're shooting from these low angles that feel far more contemporary than 1942 would usually look. Usually those movies like have like a dated quality. That's fine. It looks like a movie from that. But this movie kind of like looks ahead of time for the period.
Whose time?
Their time. And now it looks just like it holds up. Man, you haven't watched Touch of Evil. That really pisses me off. It's so frustrating to me.
Did I just ruin your day?
Oh, no.
You know what I have seen? Evils of the Night.
Yeah.
Is that anywhere similar to Touch of Evil?
Yeah, RJ.
Whatever.
And you got to watch The Trial. That with Anthony Perkins. That movie is.
Are any of these future creeps?
No, they're not. They're just Orson Welles movies.
When's our next Orson Welles movie?
Probably F for Fake.
How soon is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's confidential report or something like that. There's some more Welles coming one day. But
well, whenever we have another Orson Welles movie, you hit me with all of these movies that I should have seen.
Grave oversights.
Whatever, man. You come at me when you watch King Arthur and Evils of the Night, and then we can talk about who's really pulling their weight on this podcast.
You queer-looking duck.
Queer-looking duck? Who, that queer-looking duck over there? Yeah. What about this queer-looking duck over here? Yeah. He says it like fucking 100 times. I hate you, George.
You should hate Booth. I'm sure that's a Booth Tarkington.
That guy sucks.
Hey. You don't know anything about that man. He has no problem with you.
I mean, George sucks. Yeah. But Booth Tarkington is surely not a real person anyways, so.
He's the real deal. So this is a fun little bit here. Back in the day, if you recall, Peter Bogdanovich, filmmaker and sort of old Pete, the Bog. He wrote that, or he compiled This Is Orson Welles, his series of interviews he did with Orson Welles for like years and years and years. Welles confirmed that he had planned to reshoot the ending of The Magnificent Ambersons with the principal cast members who were still living.
Oh, shit.
So his idea is here. Yes, I had an outside chance to finish it again just a couple years ago, but I couldn't swing it. The fellow who was going to buy the film for me disappeared from view. The idea was to take the actors who are still alive now, Joseph Cotton, Baxter, Moorhead, Holt, and do quite a new end to the movie, 20 years after. Maybe that way we could have got a new release and a large audience to see it for the first time. You see, the basic intention was to portray a golden world, almost one of memory, and then show what it turns into. Having set up this dream town of the good old days, the whole point was to show the automobile wrecking it, not only the family, but the town. All this is out. What's left is only the first 6 reels. Then there's a kind of arbitrary bringing back down the curtain by a series of clumsy, quick devices. The bad black world was supposed to be too much for people. My whole third act is lost because of all the hysterical tinkering that went on, and it was hysterical. Everybody that they could find was cutting it. So,
cutting what?
His foreskin, RJ.
Jarrett? This is our 100th episode, and you bring that shit?
It wouldn't be a 100th episode without at least one mention of foreskin.
Good God. The 2 people who listen to this show are real disappointed with you, buddy. Real disappointed.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But, yeah, man. I don't know. It's like I said, like just like on a technical level, this movie is absolutely worth watching.
Sure.
And from subjectively speaking, I think that the story for me is like it works for me. It's like not what it should be, but I think it's good. It's not a great film, but because of these elements. But I think there's like so much here that's interesting. And as far as like Orson Welles movies go, I mean, like when you go through his stuff, I mean, he's not like this like because he made that Citizen Kane movie. People think every time out for him was like a masterpiece. That is not the case.
Because Citizen Kane was bad?
No, like I mean, talking about like he directed some movies that like his 41 films to his credit. There's a bunch of movies no one talks about.
I follow.
Yeah,
I follow what you're saying.
As you will. Yeah.
Hey, we haven't had a lot of fart noises this episode.
Congrats.
Does that mean we're maturing as people, or?
Oh yeah, the other thing with this film too is so Bernard Herrmann did the score for this movie, and it was heavily edited. When more than half of his score was removed from the soundtrack, Berman bitterly severed his ties with the film and promised legal action if his name were removed from the credit or not removed from the credits. Yeah.
Is that good?
No.
Oh.
All these guys.
I don't know how Hollywood works, man.
Well, I don't know. Has it changed much? I mean, we're talking about fucking Solo, like earlier, and it's like this movie that, like, oh, this is a compromised vision. You had people reshooting stuff, and here we are flopping all around.
Well, this podcast is heavily edited. I listened to an episode a while ago, and like 30% of what I actually say makes it into the episode. So
I wish I had that type of time.
Well, somebody's editing it.
SoundCloud. Well, RJ, it's not all smiles and sunshine. There are people who are not fans of this film. You might say, even hate this film. So who hates it? Alex Lovendahl, 1 star. Oh, now, this I just don't get. There are people out there saying an unmitigated Andersons would be better than Citizen Kane, but I have absolutely zero trust in that idea. George Amberson is one of the most obnoxious and disinteresting lead characters in cinema history. The primary subversion of the film seems to be dismissing the fact that his petty concerns are meaningful to anyone else. I agree with the film on that idea, but all of the drama fails for me because it's tensionless. Reading about Welles' cut material makes it sound like a much better movie than the one we have, but that's certainly not enough to make me buy it as a better than Kane. Now, actually, the first 25 minutes, as often cited by Michael Phillips, are pretty great. They're the most innovative cinematically and the least centered on George being a turd. But this is almost undoubtedly a rescue candidate for the future because I found the remainder of this shrill whenever I didn't find it dull.
Is there actually people who say this is better than Citizen Kane?
I'm sure there's some attention-seeking people back in the day that would say that. But my experience nowadays is that people kind of like want to shit on Citizen Kane. They want to. They are like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And
they poo-poo it?
They poo-poo it. I could chalk it up to these millennials these days, but
I'm not totally sure I follow.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't say that this movie probably is not as good as Citizen Kane. I'll just go out there, even in its intact form. It would be nice to have it intact, but I mean, come on.
That's a pretty hot take, buddy.
What? That this movie's not as good as Citizen Kane, regardless of it being intact?
Well,
I
guess.
Like a foreskin.
Jarrett, come on, man.
Thomas Roke, 1 star. Tedious and boring. The elements that have any drama feel like quaint and bone-headed stereotypes. As with most of Welles, the cinematography is impressive, which is the only reason I rated it higher than I could have. 1 star. I thought everything else about it sucked. We spent 88 minutes watching idiots indulge idiot logic until they get buggered soundly by their own ass-headedness. This 88 ass-headedness.
Oh, okay.
This 88 minutes is made more torturous, not less, by the fact that the studio cut more than an hour out of the film. Given that the endpoint makes it all a boring waste of time, I can't even imagine how pissed I would be if I'd spent yet another hour getting there. The 88 minutes I did spend felt like 88 hours. I hate this movie. Seriously, in all caps. I want to kill myself after watching it.
Oh, come on.
Get the hell out of my head, Orson Welles. Half your movies suck.
Ooh, man, this guy's fucking edgy. He's talking about killing himself. He's talking about how the fucking producers did him bad. Ooh, baby. I don't know. People get a little worked up about stuff, it seems.
Go harass George on Twitter.
Yeah, I bet this person is harassing people he doesn't like on the Instagram.
Might very well be.
The Roses of the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, any other thoughts?
Not really, buddy. I think it's all right.
The kids are all right, too?
The kids are all right, buddy.
No.
You ever say buddy a lot?
No.
Hey, bud.
I don't like to sound like an idiot.
Know what I mean, ain't there, bud?
Oh my god.
Ooh,
I just go out into the streets and hear that.
Right on, bud.
Bud. Guy.
Hey, bud.
Hey, guy.
Hey, guy, come over here for a minute, real quick.
Oh my goodness. Oh my god.
You ever do one of those?
I try not to. I don't. No, I don't, RJ. After the break, RJ's getting hit by a car and Jarrett's blowing up.
Blowing up how, like in popularity or out the butt?
Or from lifting.
Are you blowing out your butt, buddy?
I'm all blown out, man.
Ooh.